Okay, let's do this. We're called to order the regular Borough Assembly meeting of Monday, March 21st, 2022, here at 6 p.m. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Bob?
Here.
Jeff?
Here.
Mark?
Mark is excused.
Jay?
Here.
Chelsea?
Here.
David?
Here.
Thomas?
Here.
Thank you.
For those listening at home, we have 5 of us here in chambers and Member Mucci is zooming in. With that, let us all rise for the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance. Brings us to item number 3, approval of minutes. We have minutes from the March 7, 2022 Assembly meeting. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So move.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Tremblay and seconded by Member Kensinger. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The approval of minutes passes unanimously. Brings us to item number 4, amendment and or approval of tonight's meeting agenda. I'd either entertain a motion to approve the agenda as is or hear any amendments.
I move to approve the agenda, but I also have an amendment if you want to.
Start with the amendment, please, sir.
Okay. I'd like to add a discussion on your item under 17, assembly discussion items, and that would be on House Bill number 303, which is an act relating to commercial passenger vessel environmental compliance related to commercial passenger vessel fees, establishing the wastewater infrastructure grant fund, repealing the authority for citizen suits, again, related to commercial passenger vessel environmental compliance.
I'll second that as amended.
Clerk Thompson, do you get the bones of that?
Not exactly, but I see Bob reading off of something, so I will get it.
It'll be Assembly Discussion B unless there's any objection from the Assembly on that. Okay. In that case, I would entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda as amended.
So move.
Oh, what I dropped there, Clerk Thompson?
Can we have a second on the original approve the agenda, please? Okay, well, I thought she did on the amendment part, but that's okay. I'll say that you did for the original. Thank you.
Thank you for keeping us in line, Clerk Thompson, as always. And we'll jump back to entertaining a motion to approve the agenda as amended. You do it?
Yes.
Okay, Clerk, sorry. Member Tremblay made the motion. Who seconded it? Did anybody second? Okay, Member Lynn, right on. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we navigated through that one there. The agenda's been approved as amended. Public hearings, we have none this evening, but we do have bid awards. Public Works Culvert Replacement Project Bid Award. Utility Director Hagerman, on behalf of Public Works Director Cotta, recommends the award of the Public Works Culvert Replacement Project to Reed Brothers Logging and Construction, Inc. for an amount not to exceed $568,605. I entertain a motion to approve this bid award.
So move.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Kensinger. Any discussion on the bid award? Clerk, please call the roll.
Bob,
Yes.
David, Jay,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Chelsea.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that bid award is approved unanimously. Brings us to item 7, persons to be heard on items related to tonight's agenda. Anyone in the audience, or do we have anybody in the queue, by the way, Clerk Thompson, zooming in?
We do not.
Just making sure. If anyone in the audience want to speak to items related to the agenda this evening, now is the time. If anybody would. Cool. That will bring us to item 8, persons to be heard on items unrelated to tonight's agenda. Anybody would like to speak to that this evening? So step forward and please state your name, who you represent. A reminder that you have 5 minutes, which I'll start a clock for. Also to the Roberts rules of things, please address the assembly as a whole, not individuals. And seeing the faces in the audience, civic and responsible conversation will not be an issue, but I need to always say it anyway. The floor is yours, sir. Please proceed.
My name is Jim Floyd. I'm here representing myself. Recently, a few emails were shared with me obtained through the Freedom of Information Act. These emails were from members of the Assembly to the borough manager, directing him to put pressure on police Chief Kerr to get him in line or go away. This was directly related to him speaking up at the November 17th meeting concerning his observations as a citizen of this town and sharing his opinions about finding citizens about the mask mandate. I listened to the meeting several times. His concern was for the enforcement of the fines on the citizens and the businesses of Petersburg. He didn't say that the police department wouldn't do their jobs. He stated it would affect everyone in the borough if officers were being utilized for that purpose. From the email, one comment that he is, quote, a spokesman of the social media crowd and his attitude needs to be dealt with, end quote, is both highly offensive and morally wrong. It was asked to have Chief Kerr be addressed publicly at the next assembly meeting. These comments and more could be interpreted as misconduct and accordingly to borough charter is an overextension of their positions. The borough manager pointed out that of the charter section 2.1, where the section highlighted, quote, subordinates of the borough manager shall report and obtain direction from the borough manager and not from the assembly, the mayor, or individual assembly. And in code section 3.08.050, the assembly, quote, the assembly and its individual members shall deal with the administrative service of the municipality solely through the borough manager. Since that meeting of November 17, 2021, the topic of the police department and the chief has been publicly discussed at several meetings. On the meeting of January 18th, there was a discussion that was supposed to be on the borough hiring practices. Instead, it was an inquisition against Chief Kerr and the police hiring practices. February 7th, there was an attempt to have the police department fall under the review of the Public Advisory Board, which a member of this assembly is not part of, but is the go-to. Again, on March 7th, the police department came under discussion on numerous items. I was a little encouraged when the subject of retention and additional pay was introduced. However, now I'm wondering if it was another attempt to extend control over the department. I don't think you realize how this constant public scrutiny affects morale. We have a very safe community because of the public presence of the department. I see young children walk in the streets and it's nice that they can safely walk home. I walk my dog daily on the main road and wave back and forth at the patrol cars. In the lower 48s, this is unheard of. One of the great things about America is we have the right to voice our opinions, which is guaranteed by the Constitution. People in this town are fearful of speaking out. We listen to your opinions and rhetoric. It is not okay for you to use your position of influence in this manner. What is needed is your support and that of the community of our chief and the department. I have not heard of any other department receive this much attention. This is being perceived as a vendetta and a mission to undermine Chief Kerr and the police force by many people in this town. My request is simple. Move forward and stop interfering with the welfare and safety of our great town. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Floyd. Anyone else in the audience who would like to speak to items unrelated to tonight's agenda? All right, we'll move forward to the next item then. Again, thank you for your testimony this evening. Item 9, boards, commission, and committee reports. We have none this evening. There is nothing on the consent agenda, but on our report of other officers, we have the housing discussion report. Assemblymember Tremblay will provide us a report on a March 10th, 2022 meeting to discuss housing in Petersburg. Member Tremblay, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So this was a meeting that happened. First, I'll list off the groups that were there. It was myself, the borough manager, as well as Annette Bennett, who was there in her capacity in Humanity in Progress Board, as well as her wave hat. And then we had Ashley Kawashima, also with the HIP Board. She also serves with PMC's Behavioral Health Division. Chad Wright, Petersburg Indian Association Director, Liz Cabrera, PEDC, and Director of Community and Economic Development. Then we also had other members of the SHARE Coalition, Becky Turland, also with PMC and the Community Wellness, as well as AJ Ware with WAVE, Aaron Michaels with the State of Alaska Public Health, and then Chris Norris attended as well, and that's from the Petersburg Community Foundation. And so I'll just go through quickly some of the this was a meeting that took us weeks to put together, and our next meeting is the first week of May. So the goal of these meetings is to bring together new information and see if we can answer each other's questions and then see what else comes to light in the next couple months. So both the borough manager and PIA have been in touch with the same contact at Clinton and Haida Housing Authority. And the Clinton Haida Housing Authority is currently waiting to hear about grants. They have applied for 23, 2 would be specific to Petersburg. They were supposed to have updates on those grants by the new year, and they were still waiting by March. So we're hoping that stuff will start to come together soon. One would be a housing development, a second would be a triplex. So not necessarily low-income housing, but at least single-family units. And then in updates from HIP, it's pretty exciting. It's a new source of funding through the Alaska Housing Corporation. And this is helping people who are currently experiencing homelessness. And the goal is to get those folks shifted into housing as soon as possible. And so it's fluid funding. That means it can be used for a lot of things, including rent, move-in supplies, deposits. It's new, which means that they're going slowly in the application of the process. So they are taking applications one at a time. One person is currently enrolled, up to 25 may be able to be helped depending on the funds. And so the application is on the HIP's website, which is psghumanity.org. And again, this report is attached to the agenda for the meeting. People can find it on the Borough website or email me. And that has instructions for how you can find the application on their website. And let's see, so WAVE, an update from WAVE is that they've received a grant through the Alaska Community Foundation, which is which had received ARPA funds to help people with utility assistance if they've been impacted by COVID. And that's a one-time payment of $250. And they also have cleaning supply kits available for that same reason. And you can contact WAVE to find out more about that. And then we talked a little bit about the new Vackerstead apartments, which are a mix of market rate to income-based housing opening up in April. And so again, this was all in 1 hour with all those different groups. And the thing that we definitely all agreed on is that it is a yes and approach to the housing solution, to the housing problem here in town. What works for one family or one individual will not work for others. And so we're hoping that by continuing to keep these ongoing conversations happening across these organizations is that we can keep coming up with creative ways to meet housing needs. There was something that a member of the meeting said that I thought was really important to highlight. So first of all, most of the work happening on this issue is happening, and not most, I don't want to overspeak, a large amount of work happening on the issue of trying to solve housing in town is happening on the back of volunteers. It's people operating outside of their official capacities. And so something that we all agreed on is it would be really nice if we could somehow find, if anybody out there has capacity or infrastructure to help us figure out how to pay somebody to do this work, to be finding grants, to be pulling these kinds of things together, that would be great. Most of these people already have full-time jobs. They don't want to leave those jobs to go do this work. And even if they did, they don't know where the funding would come from. So that was kind of the thing that we noticed that we all agreed on, that it'd be really great to not have to volunteer on top of working 50 plus 60 hours a week to be trying to solve this really systemic issue. And then a quote that I wanted to share is, on a weekly basis, people are deciding between paying utilities and groceries for their kids. And these are working families. You can work in this town and not be able to afford your rent. And so I guess by bringing this to the assembly, I just want us to keep this all in mind as we go forward and as we work with all kinds of institutions in our town, whether it's private or other public groups, that this is a problem now, and it's probably only going to get worse as we look at buildings deteriorate in our climate. And so I'm hoping that we can find some answers, but it's going to be a long time. So if people want to get involved or join us from our conversations, our next one is May 4th. We've been having them at 10 a.m. and it does happen on Zoom just because it's a lot more convenient for all these busy folks to not have to drive to a meeting place. So if anyone has any questions on any of that, I'm happy to try to answer them. And I'm speaking for myself. I sent out these notes to everybody, but if I misspoke or any of these groups have issues with what I said, the fault is on me and not on what they're doing. So any questions?
Yeah, any questions from Member Tremblay? Thank you. Member Lynn, go ahead.
You talked about 25. Is that 25 for Petersburg, 25? that
Yes.
Could be handled.
25 individuals, yes. But that is dependent on both Humanity in Progress, and this is the funding for getting people situated. Due to the lack of housing available in Petersburg, for example, you can qualify for Section 8 and have a Section 8 voucher and not be able to find any place that accepts Section 8. So you're still sleeping in your car, for example. So it's moving slowly just because it's new to HIP, it's new to the Alaska Housing Corporation. And so that is the outside limit, but they are learning as they apply this, what it's going to cost to get people into spaces. So, yeah.
Member Tremblay. Thank you, Member Tremblay, for that report. Much appreciated, and look forward to tackling some of that bigger issue as time goes on. So thank you again. Member Mucci, the Southeast Otter Stakeholder Working Group quarterly meeting report. Assembly Member Mucci will provide a report on the February 28th, 2022 Sea Otter Working Group meeting. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Attached to the agenda today was some draft minutes from a meeting that I was not able to attend on the 28th of February. I'm part of a Southeast Alaska Sea Otter Stakeholder Working Group, and it's mostly folks from the academic section as well as harvesters in Southeast who are trying to figure out a better way to get a handle on the increasing amount of otters that are in Southeast that impact shellfish and other areas of commercial fisheries in Petersburg. So the draft minutes are there. There's two studies that are produced in there. It talks about the population dynamics of sea otters in Southeast Alaska and the relationship to sea otters in Southeast and to the increasing kelp forest in Southeast Alaska, which has another impact on shellfish between urchins and abalone in Southeast. So that's my report. It's in there for you to read, and I can provide, I can answer any questions you might have, but it's just there for your information. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Member Mucci. Any questions for Member Mucci? Right on. We'll move on. Thank you again, Jeff. Brings us forward to Mayor's report. We are seeking letters of interest. The Petersburg Borough is accepting letters of interest from citizens who wish to serve the community by filling one of the vacant seats on the following borough boards, commissions until October 22, held the municipal election. We have a Planning Commission, 2 vacant seats. Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, 2 vacant seats. Letters of interest should be submitted to Clerk Thompson at the borough offices located at 12 South Nordic Drive by sending to P.O. Box 329, Petersburg, AK 99833, or by emailing to dthompson@petersburgak.gov. And for both of those boards, I hope people would put their names in for them. I'm looking particularly at the Planning Commission. I think it's a critically important body, so your service would be much appreciated. And although this is not on the mayor's report, I'm sure we're talking about it again. We have 2 longtime borough employees who are moving on soon. And since I saw Sandy Dixon sitting here, and I know she does not like me speaking directly to her this way, but tough. I just wanted to thank you so much for your service, Sandy. My words will not be enough to express that, but you're more valued than you know, and I simply thank you. And Sheilyn Bell also has put in her resignation. I want to very publicly thank her for her hard work at the manor. As you've talked to families of residents up there, like they feel loved and they feel cared for. And thank you, Sheilyn, very much for that. And thank you again, both Sandy and Sheilyn, for your service. Much appreciated. That brings us to the manager's report, which we do not have because the borough manager, who I'm most certainly hoping is not listening, is visiting a grandchild right now and on a much deserved break. So good for Steve. Off to unfinished business. Item A, ordinance 2022-03, an ordinance amending Petersburg Municipal Code, Chapter 14.20, entitled Municipal Harbors to increase harbor fees. Adoption of ordinance 2022-03 will increase harbor moorage and use fees effective April 1st, 2022. This ordinance was unanimously approved in its first and second readings. I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Motion has been made by Member Tremblay and seconded by Member Lynn. Discussion. I'll speak brief. Jeff, did you have your hand up there? We have just feedback. I'll speak briefly to it. I'm often reminded, just because we've talked about these things, that for 4 weeks at 2 different meetings, members of the public may have not. I'll be voting for this again tonight. No one likes seeing their fees go up. I'm no different, but we have very, very functional and effective harbor here, and this plan has been thoroughly vetted by both the harbor master and the harbor board, and hopefully this can be another step in keeping our harbors at the high level that we've come to expect. Without further comment, I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thomas? Chelsea? Bob? Jeff?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes,
Thank you.
and that passes unanimously in its third and final reading. 15, new business. Ordinance 2022-04, and ordinance adjusting the fiscal year 2022 budget for known changes. Ordinance 2022-04, if adopted, will approve fund transfers to provide for 1, electric department 399 CAT in-frame overhaul, 2, purchase of a new flatbed plow truck for the harbor department, 3, acceptance of the $1,430,892 DCRA local government lost revenue grant, and 4, unexpected rooftop snow removal and electrical expenses for the Parks and Recreation Department during our snowpocalypse. I would entertain a motion to approve in its first reading.
So move.
Second.
Motion has been made by member Tremblay and seconded by member Lynn. Discussion. Member Kinsinger.
I just have a question, I guess directed at Jody. $1,430,000, well, quite a bit of change actually. When do we get that money, and does that just go into we just put that, park it in the general fund? Or how exactly is that all gonna work?
Well, they're still working. Can you hear me okay?
You're very clear.
Okay, great. So they're still working out the details. It's new to the state as well. We actually haven't signed the award document yet, so I don't know the exact date we will be awarded the money, but I believe it'll be a reimbursement type of revenue.
Go right ahead, member Kinsinger.
And does that mean we have to show that we've had affected losses to offset this, to receive this money?
Well, we've already shown that when we filed the application. I had to fill out a long formula application. And so that's where the 1.4 million came from. Actually, it totaled, if you remember, about $5 million, but we didn't get all of that money that we requested. And so now it'll have to be every quarter, we will ask them to reimburse us for different expenses that are reasonable that they approve. So, and the list is very long. It can be pretty much anything that the general government can spend money on.
Answer your question, member Kinsinger?
Yes, and then I assume that this would just go into the general fund?
Well, it goes into a special fund because it's federal money, so we have to track it very carefully. But as you approved in the last resolution at the last meeting on March 7th, a large portion of this is going to go to the hospital. We'll set up some MOAs with them for allowable uses that the assembly will approve. And the $825,000 will go to the medical center. A portion of the money, $136,000, will go to different enterprise funds, not all of the enterprise funds, but some of them that showed lost revenue. And the remaining $469,000 will go to the general fund.
Sure.
Yeah.
Keep it rolling.
Yes, I just want to thank you for, I know it's a lot of hard work putting that together, and I just wanted to make sure that everybody in the public realized the work that you've done to get us these funds, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any further comments or questions from the assembly in this first reading? Oh, member Tremblay, it's all you.
Thank you. I just thought I'd read out some of the details that were in the ordinance for people listening at home. So it includes an award or work within the harbor department that Motorpool will be recommending a replacement flatbed, right? flatbed plow truck in the 23 budget. However, the harbor would like to get an early start on the replacement due to serious deterioration of the existing unit. And then, as Jody mentioned, the large fund and the large bulk coming from the state. And then this, the Parks and Rec reasoning was unexpected rooftop snow removal resulting in hiring additional temporary help and the purchase of a snow blower. Due to the delay in electrical repairs, Parks and Rec will see 2 more months of higher electrical charges. So since we're here staring at it, thought I'd read it out for everyone.
For clarifying that for members of the public, Member Tremblay. Further comments in the first reading? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Jay,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Chelsea, Jeff,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David.
Yes.
Thank you.
First reading, and for those listening at home who may have interest in the topic, the next reading will be at the first meeting in April, and it will have a public hearing for it. Food for thought. Item B, Resolution 2022-03, a resolution authorizing public sale of parcel number 01-004-320, located at 700 Sandy Beach Road by outcry auction. At the March 7th, 2022 meeting, the Assembly voted to sell borough-owned property located at 700 Sandy Beach Road by outcry auction to be held on May 2nd, 2022 at 12 p.m. Resolution 2022-03 provides for the sale, the date and time of the sale. The minimum bid price, $77,500, and provides a contract of sale and quitclaim deed documents. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Tremblay and seconded by Member Kensinger. Discussion. I know we spoke about this as we approved at the last meeting, but the floor is open for discussion on the outcry auction, if there is any. Member Tremblay.
This will be my first outcry auction on the Assembly. Clerk Thompson, do you mind explaining how it will work? So it happens at an Assembly meeting or after? I mean, please walk me through the process as I will be new to this.
Sure. I believe if we did it as we've done it before, it will happen at the very beginning of the Assembly meeting on May 2nd at noon. So it'll be call to order, say the pledge and go right to the auction, I believe, after the roll call. And so we will have people who have come in and signed up to be in the auction, and Mayor Jensen will run the auction basically, and he'll start with a minimum bid price, and people can raise their hand with different bids as we go along until no one does so. And then we've got the highest bid.
Okay. Does he have to use the auctioneering voice?
I don't know.
Okay.
He's pretty good at it though.
Did not use the auctioneering voice last time, but he ran it quite well. It was a successful auction.
Okay. And then just for the public, if you want to sign up to be a part of that outcry auction, does that happen? How far in advance do you need to do that? Or can you do it, just walk in and sign up?
You can
right
do
before the
it
meeting?
at any time prior to the meeting starting, and I will have on the website very soon instructions, auction instructions. I just haven't put them together yet.
Thank you.
Yes.
Questions, Member Tremblay? And yeah, I've been a part of one. It's an auction, all right, that's for sure. No further comments. Will the clerk please call the roll?
David,
Yes.
Bob, Jeff,
Yes.
Jay, Thomas,
Yes.
Chelsea.
Yes.
Thank you.
Resolution 2022-03 passes unanimously. Brings us to item C, Resolution 2022-04, a resolution authorizing the public sale of parcel number 01-014-180 located at 1015 Sandy Beach Road by outcry auction. Similarly, at the March 7th, 2022 meeting, the Assembly voted to sell borough-owned property located at 1015 Sandy Beach Road by outcry auction to be held May 2nd, 2022 at 12 p.m. Resolution 2022-04 provides for the sale, the date and time of the sale, the minimum bid price, $168,800, and provides the contract of sale and quitclaim deed documents. So I would entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Tremblay and seconded by Member Lynn. As those listening at home can tell, this is pretty much identical to the last one, but is there any Assembly discussion on this one? Clerk, please call the roll.
Jeff,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
thank you.
And that item also passes unanimously. We will look forward to an outcry auction coming up on May 2nd. Item D, Fire EMS Cardiac Monitor Purchase. Fire EMS Director Dixon requests approval to purchase a new and updated cardiac monitor for the department at a cost of approximately $40,000. The state of Alaska has added new standard scope of practice skills at all EMT levels related to medications and cardiac care. In order to perform these skills, the department needs a cardiac monitor with additional features that our current monitors do not possess. One monitor is 15+ years old and the other is 10 years old. The department has $10,000 in grant money to use toward the purchase. I'd entertain a motion to approve this purchase.
So move.
Second.
The motion has been made by Member Tremblay and seconded by Member Kensinger. Discussion. Member Lynn.
Yes, if we could we get Sandy to give a idea what this does for us in terms of comparing the old to the new and what better services provides?
Okay, well, obviously, better care for the people in the community is what we're striving for. Some of the new scope of practice things, it will allow us to monitor in-tidal CO2. So that's the balance in our bodies when we're breathing. And synchronized cardioversion. So if somebody has an irregular heart rate, we can, or a super fast heart rate, if you've heard of supraventricular tachycardia, we can cardiovert them. It will allow us to cardiac pace. So if they have a very slow heart rate, we can pace them and provide them electrical stimulation to hopefully get their heart to beat with that rate. And then it will allow us to do 12 lead EKG essentially. So currently we only can do a 3-lead EKG. So it doesn't give us a very good read of what's going on in the heart. And then it will allow us to administer other cardiac medications to better treat the patients.
Thank you.
Member Lynn. Further discussion from the assembly. Member Mucci, if I should check in over there, you feel like chiming in or are you good for now?
I'm good.
Just checking in. Any further questions for Sandy or Jody Tao? All right, well, the clerk call the roll, please.
Chelsea,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes,
thank you.
And that passes unanimously. Be good to get that updated. Item E, Federal Infrastructure Grant Symposium. Senator Murkowski is hosting the Federal Infrastructure Grant Symposium in Anchorage on April 11, 2022. Manager Giesbrecht requests the assembly decide if an assembly member or members and/or borough staff should attend the event. From a staff perspective, Director Cabrera, Director Tao, and/or Manager Giesbrecht, who will be in Anchorage for the meeting, be good choices if schedules allow. We can do this in any number of ways. I was reading an email from Mayor Jensen that he thought it'd be good if Steve, Liz, and Jody went. Unless somebody wants to do something different, I would entertain a motion to approve the travel for Steve, Liz, and Jody for this symposium.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Mucci and seconded by Member Tremblay. Member Lynn, you look like you had something to say. I'll give you the floor right out
I
of the gates.
did. I think it'd be valuable to send all three myself. And the motion is for 2 though, is what I'm hearing.
Oh, no, all three.
It was for 3.
Okay,
Got the whole jolly lot of them.
all right.
All right.
I'm okay with that. Thank
Sounds
you.
good. Yeah, just to your point, I think what you said, Member Lynn, is spot on. These people, that's their wheelhouse, and this grant symposium could be very, very valuable and have potentially some good financial back end for us later on. So I think I'll be glad the 3 of them, if scheduled allow, will be going. Any other discussion from the assembly regarding this? Clerk, please call the roll.
Thomas,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Jeff.
Yep.
Bob,
Yes,
David,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
thank you.
To send Steve, Liz, and Jody to the Federal Infrastructure Grant Symposium. Item F, March 23, 2022, Child Care Work Session Agenda. Assembly Member Mucci requests approval of the March 23rd, 2022 Work Session Agenda on childcare. I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Mucci and seconded by Member Kensinger. Member Mucci, if you want to lead it out, since you're kind of putting together this agenda, if you're up for it, I'll let you open the discussion.
I'll do my best, Mr. Mayor. And Debbie knows how much I like to use paper agendas, and so.
We're with you.
Thank you. This is the culmination of a bunch of people working on the childcare issue in Petersburg. And these are some of the topics that have percolated to the top. And this is kind of the draft agenda. You guys wanted to look at it before the meeting. It might not be perfect. We've invited the folks who were intimately involved with childcare in Petersburg, the directors, some people from the hospital, other staff members as well. And it's just a conversation to give information to the assembly about maybe some possibilities that we could look at in the future. It's not actually funding any program, but there's some ideas that have come up in a couple of public work sessions that either the Share Coalition had earlier in the winter, or like in January or February. And this is kind of a culmination of some of the ideas that percolated to the top. And it's just a chance for the assembly to hear some of the ideas and think about it and chat about it. I know there's a few there. We're only looking at an hour for a work session, and if we don't get to all of them, I think we can prioritize them between now and the meeting happens on Wednesday. But yeah, that's what they're there for. I'm not asking for any commitment for borough funds for any of this stuff, but they're just ideas that maybe should take a little bit of conversation as we get ready for the budget process here in the next couple of months. And that's where we are. And I'm happy to answer any questions if I could. So yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Member Mucci. Member Lynn, I saw you first.
Yeah, I've mentioned, I think at the last two sessions, that I really think the agenda ought to be very specific to one particular topic or concentrated on one thing. There's all six of these items you can spend 5 or 6 hours on. There's nothing here that, in my mind, that focuses what I would consider a real focus that should involve all of us. You look at the utility reimbursement, that can't happen now because of the bonding that we've just signed on to, because we can't give any kind of remuneration to anybody based on that the bonding that we signed. So that's really off the table, so to speak. Some of the other items I think are great. I just don't think it's specific enough, and I don't, just for public disclosure, I probably won't attend. Thank you.
Member Tremblay.
I think I agree with a lot of, as contradictory as they are, what both people have said so far, that it is, all of these topics are worth talking about, but there are so many of them on one agenda that I do think that that's getting us into trouble. So I would like to offer an amendment and strike everything from the agenda except for Early Childhood Education Task Force and the last question, what can the borough do to help with the childcare conversation and sustainable answers to future needs? Because I see this as a goal. So I guess that I'll make that a formal amendment in a second, but just explaining the reasoning is that I think this is an opportunity for us to meet again with the childcare providers. They had that presentation with us a few months ago, and we're in this really difficult place where none of us are necessarily the policy experts, but we're closer to that than some of the folks in the working in the field right now. Like, we're on the policy side, they're on the work side of it, and they're working too many hours, whereas it's our job to come up with policy answers. So I see this as a way for us to get our heads together for a little bit and then see what we can do to keep the conversational ball moving forward. Because just like housing, this is as systemic as it can get, and we need answers sooner than later. So formally, I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda for the work session so that it was only the discussion of Early Childhood Education Task Force, and then the second question, what can the borough do to help with the childcare conversations and sustainable answers to future needs?
Is there a
I'll second
second
that.
to that amendment?
I'll second it for discussion purposes.
All right, this amendment has been made. Clerk Thompson, I'm sure you got that, to strike everything but items number 5 and 6, and it's been seconded by Member Lynn. Further discussion on the amendment?
Now, I'd like to go back. I don't think I disagree with you, but I think it would be better if there was work done outside so that when that meeting took place, I guess what I'm suggesting is that that meeting on Wednesday be delayed until such time as something could be put together that would really focus the questions and really, you know, makes most value of everybody's time.
Go ahead, Member Tremblay.
I see where that's coming from. However, I see work already happening on the outside to get us to this point. And so I'm not sure what we would gain with more time and more work, because I think it's more, so much is happening in disparate circles right now that I feel it's been enough time that pooling together would work. And so that's my.
Not a member. Cool. Oh, member. I see you waving, Jeff. Take the floor.
It was all fingers, Jay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I seconded this. I think it's a good idea. You know, this is just a draft agenda that I put up there. I think, you know, there's been some conversation about this task force that they've asked us to kind of be part of or put together. And, you know, what can the borough do? I think we can hear from some of those folks if, you know, what they think is a good idea. And I think we deserve to hear some of those folks and chew on this for a while. If some members of the assembly are too busy and can't come, that's fine. But this conversation is not going to end on Wednesday night. And I think those two items that Member Tremblay put together on there, I think that'll be fine. That'll get us a little bit farther along on the process. And yeah, I'm good with that. So yeah, thank you, Chelsea. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Member Mucci. Further discussion? I'll chime in here for a second. I'm just going to flesh this out as I go. I like the amendment. I think it's good. I'm looking at the agenda. I think it didn't need to be refined. If we're looking at an hour, this, to me, we could spend days on that. And as far as from an assembly level, if we're doing an assembly work session, what's going to be prudent place for us to be a part of? You know, I'm just looking at some of the amended things, childcare, essential workers. I'm not trying to use absolute language, but I think anybody who has either had children or knows people with children understands that childcare workers are essential workers. So I don't think that needs to be on a work session. We can strike that out. And quality improvement program, you know, for childcare workers is, I think, a broader topic that the industry will continue to work on. And something like that, I would love to see something specifically brought to the assembly in terms of, you know, if we could, you know, help on that. You know, the flexible spending accounts for borough employees, I think that's something we can do in-house as is without a work session. And as Member Lynn said, the utility and reimbursement program, based on our bonding, it can't happen. Which brings me to the two that are on there. The Early Childhood Education Task Force is something I keyed in on. And I like that concept a lot. For my own 2 cents, and this can get fleshed out at the work session, is I think there would be something to be driven outside of the assembly from community members. I think we could have a liaison to it. You know, like that'd be Member Mucci or any members of the assembly who wanted to be a part of that. But anyway, that segues into number 6, what, you know, can the borough do to help with childcare conversations and sustainable answers to future needs? That's the word that I key in on, is sustainable. For those who were not listening to APRN maybe about 2 weeks ago, they did a long story on the radio about some of the childcare challenges they've had in Juneau over the last couple of years. And it's multifaceted. You know, COVID played some role in that, but it's also employment number. It's, in short, it's a very complex issue, not simple, not linear. And getting to the bottom of that question, having the task force, if one is formed, really get some refined ideas for what we can do long-term. You know, I've spoke about this at the last assembly meeting. If the borough wants to get involved in a childcare conversation, I want it to be something long-term, whether it be infrastructure, something my grandkids can use, see, not just a reactionary patch to a problem. That doesn't strike me. That's, by definition, that's not sustainable. So my vision, it doesn't have to be everyone else's, if at this work session is really getting that childhood task force organized with people who are passionate about it and getting us some potentially actionable ideas to bring before the assembly. I was hesitant how I wanted to play this at this point. I debated if I wanted to make an amendment to chuck the work session and let it task force form itself, but I think with that agenda refined down to that, I can support Member Tremblay's amendment. And thanks for your patience with that monologue. Any further discussion on the amendment? Cool. Will the clerk please call the roll on the amendment, striking all items except for items 5 and 6 from the work session?
Bob,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Chelsea, David,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes. So the amendment passes unanimously, bringing us back to the main motion of the Petersburg Borough meeting agenda for the work session as amended. Any further discussion on this as a whole? Member Lynn?
I'm still of a mind similar to where you are, is it needs more attention before we walk into a room and at least have some homework to do to be able to, discuss it rather than to just sit in a meeting for an hour with nothing there to let everybody discuss it around. So I'll probably vote no on it for Wednesday.
Understood. Any further discussion on this? Clerk, please call the roll on the motion as amended.
David,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Bob, Jay,
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that passes on a 5-1 basis with Member Lynn dissenting. Brings us to communications. Item A, correspondence received since March 3rd, 2022 can be viewed on the Borough website. Easy to find, it is there. Feel free to go perusing. Brings us to item 17, discussion items. Juneau Economic Development Council presentation on childcare in Juneau. Assembly Member Mucci requests a discussion and requesting Brian Hoist with the JEDC to provide a 1-hour presentation to the Assembly regarding Juneau's childcare issue and how they're handling it from an economic development perspective. Member Mucci, since this was your discussion item, I will turn the floor over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, we all got a correspondence from Joni Johnson probably about a week or so, maybe 2 weeks ago, about Brian Holst wanting to share what Juneau's doing for childcare up there. And I just thought I'd throw it out there and see if there was some interest from the Assembly. And if there was, maybe we could have the city clerk correspond with Joni to see for maybe an agenda item at the next meeting to set a date when this meeting might work. This person, this Brian Holst, is out of the country for a while, or I think until the end of March. I can't remember what the letter said, but yeah, this is just part of the more information on childcare. I would answer more questions. It's a better opportunity to see what other communities are doing for childcare funding, and it was requested of us, and I just threw it on there to see if there was any interest from the Assembly. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Member Mucci. I'm gonna hop right in with that actually, because the part of that that really resonates with me is how the child care from an economic development perspective. I think we think of it as often just in like a day-to-day survival mode. We need child care. We need many things around it from focusing on the economic development aspect of that, as I find intriguing, and I would look forward to that being an action item in the future. Any further comments or discussion from the Assembly on that? Member Tremblay?
Just that I agree, and I would like to have that conversation.
Sounds great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, you bet. Anyone else? Dave, you want to chime in there?
Yes, I find it useful.
There we go. Well, Member Mucci, then, if you are so inclined, I will look forward to seeing this an action item on our next agenda.
You betcha. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, you bet. That brings us to, I did not forget Clerk Thompson, item B, Member Lynn's discussion item regarding the bill that I did not write down. So the floor is yours, sir.
It's the governor's office has asked us to support a bill. It's House Bill 303. And essentially what it does is it changes the current program for monitoring cruise ships on the inside waters. And what the bill does, it does a number of things. One, it changes everything rather than have a person on board. It puts everything into a monitoring program. So you have the equipment on board your ship, which provides the constant monitoring back to Juneau. You also have GPS coordinates that shows where your ship is in relation to going to a port, what have you. And so everything, rather than to have, it shows where it is, it shows where discharge might take place, et cetera. There is opportunities in there for an onboard observer, but it's on one, it can happen, but it's not. It's most everything will go to electronic monitoring. The second part of that, the bill would provide for some grant funding for municipalities to provide for offloading of wastes from a cruise ship and so forth. But if you look at the bill itself and then start doing the numbers of what they're looking at collecting money for, it wouldn't even begin to cover costs to do that for municipalities. I have problems with the bill also from the standpoint that it does not in any way have any kind of a punitive action. So that if you did find, where you had a release of sludge or something off of a cruise ship, there's nothing in the bill that essentially allows a municipality or the state for that matter to go back and to provide damages or to do any kind of other penalties associated with it. That's probably one of my biggest problems with the bill itself. Carl, I think, also has looked at the bill and I think sent all of us notes related to it. And what I would propose, if the assembly would agree, I would like to see an action item on the next agenda, a resolution essentially that does not support this here and does maybe support some of the current program and some of what the current program on board monitoring does. And then allow both the clerk and Carl to develop that resolution to bring forward at the next meeting. And with that, I'll open for questions to see if ever there's agreement or other changes folks might want to make.
Yeah, go ahead, Member Kinsinger.
So my understanding is we passed on the statewide level I don't know what it is.
I got you.
Yes, I mean, as a state, we voted to have the onboard ranger program.
Right.
And then currently the administration has decided not to fund it. So what this legislation is doing is essentially repealing the proposition that the people of Alaska voted on with this program.
That's exactly right.
Okay, I just want
And
to make sure I was.
it reminded me of something else. It does not provide any increase in funding to do the kind of thing they're talking about.
That was my next question that I would like to see addressed is that since the governor in his last budget eliminated the line item to provide funding for the onboard rangers, is there going to be money in this legislation that would have somebody at least looking at electronic monitoring somewhere in the state?
You can read the legislation. The way I read it is no, there's no increase. But yeah, whatever staff's there, it doesn't increase the staff. It doesn't do anything else in the state. So the way I read the legislation, Carl may have a different read than I do on it, but that's the way I read it. But I agree with you, and those have to be points that need to be addressed because I like some of the current program.
I'll weigh in real quick on this one. I'd look forward to you bringing something forward as an action item. Member Lynn, we can thrash out exactly where we want to go with it on the roll, but I think in principle, I agree completely. DECs long had, any of you cut me off when I'm speaking out of turn, long had challenges with the enforcement end of things. They'll get this anecdotal report or a direct report, video footage of, waste being, dumped into our inner waters and nothing happens. That's not a new problem, which is why the voters approved, the Ocean Rangers program in hopes of having more on-site accountability. Someone's sole job is making sure this doesn't happen. Was it perfect? No. Like anything, it has its own challenges. My concern with the way this bill is written is it'll be largely this unfunded mandate and actually can make things worse. Like Member Lynn said, the idea of zero enforcement or punitive nature, like we'd love to have visitors in Alaska as long as they also be stewards of our waters. And the way this bill is written, at least the way I'm reading it, is it feels more like a free-for-all to me. I'm not saying that was the intent of it. I'm just telling you that's how it feels to me when I read that. It's like, oh, so we even have less enforcement opportunities than we did in the past. And that doesn't sit well with me. And I hope we can craft some language that can at least request them revisiting this. Further comments from the Assembly? Right on, and look forward to seeing an action item coming up, Member Lynn. Assembly member comments this evening. Floor is open to y'all. Quiet bunch this evening, fair enough. Any recognitions this evening? Member Tremblay.
I have 3.
Right on.
So first, I'd like to thank the Arts Council. There's some live music coming tomorrow night, and it's been a long time. They've worked really hard to try to keep the spirit of music alive the last couple of years, but having live music at the auditorium is lovely. So that's tomorrow at 7, and I just hope the community shows up and enjoys the music. The 2 others are both related to news items that came out on Friday. With the loss of Congressman Don Young, we've lost a congressman that served in office longer than I've been alive, and he's left quite a legacy for all of us. And so just thought, as elected body, it was worth mentioning up here that the state of Alaska will never be the same without him. And then also, State Representative Jonathan Christ-Tompkins has announced he's not running for re-election. And it's pretty bizarre to read a news story about somebody my age who's in the top 5 in seniority in the House of Representatives of Alaska. And so I'm grateful for him giving such a huge portion of his entire adulthood at this point has been at the state level of office. And I'm grateful to him too for his time. And I guess, yeah, it was quite a Friday of news. So just wanted to highlight those things.
Thanks for those, Member Tremblay. And just to chime on to the Don Young one of that, obviously all of us in Alaska, least of all his family, are feeling that loss. And with that recognition for him and his service, what I'd highly encourage anyone to do some Don Young reading history. He was one of the most intriguing characters in Alaska politics, and by no means boring at all. The guy, he was big. He had a big personality. So buy a biography and do some reading. You can't help but smile. He will definitely be missed. Further recognitions from the Assembly.
Mr. Mayor,
Oh yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
it's not really a recognition. I wasn't able to get to my unmute button, but hey, could we just get an update on the work session? Or it's not really our work session, but the hospital work session with search up in the Assembly chambers on Thursday. What time is that? And does the clerk, is she going to be there to help with that, or just
I'll let
curiosity?
Clerk Thompson, yeah, you bet. I'll let Clerk Thompson facilitate that one for you. Go ahead, Debbie.
It begins at 5 p.m. Yes, it will be in the Assembly chambers. Yes, I will be here to run the recording equipment and all of that. It will be also on Zoom, and the agenda can be found, I think, on the hospital's website.
Okay, thank you very much.
Probably backed up, and that's important for people at home to hear. Member Lynn.
Yeah. Well, Jeff hit on partly on the topic I was going to talk on. Is that I'm looking forward. Search was giving all the questions that came up from the Assembly and from the hospital board. The hospital board will be running the meeting, and looking forward to that presentation from Search that would help to answer all the questions that were presented. Thank you.
Yeah, that'll be valuable for the community for sure. And since it's being done on Zoom, if for whatever reason you do not want or are unable to attend, you can watch the meeting later and take your time perusing it. So that's good. Further recognitions on this fair evening? In that case, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Tremblay, second by Member Lynn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.